really happy and proud to represent you, a Lithuanian, Almantas Karpavičius, who is a senior software engineer at TransUnion. And actually, I'm very excited, and I was like thrilled when I heard that Almantas is a founder of C# programmers community that has over 6,000 members. I think it's more than exciting. So I think it's time to start. Almantas, stage is yours.
Thank you. Today I would like to give a talk on liberating structures and give ideas on how to make engaging and fun meetings. But before doing that, I would like to talk about a little contrast that I went through this year. At the start of this year, I was actually a Scrum methodology skeptic. I had nothing wrong. I had no bad feelings about Scrum itself, but the experience I had was that there were so many meetings, and so many of them I found myself just listening to more experienced people while being silent myself, or having meetings where people talk and they derail and doesn't reach to a point of conclusion that often. So I was trying to look for ways how to improve this experience, and I discovered liberating structures. Before we start, I would like to talk about the 5 classical meeting formats. How are they different from liberating structures? The 5 meeting formats are presentation, brainstorm, status report, open discussion, and managed discussion. The key difference between those formats and liberating structures is that they are synchronous. In other words, there's usually one person talking and many others are listening. They are good formats, but using them all the time makes meetings quite boring. What if there was no lead in a meeting? In other words, what if you didn't have to facilitate a meeting and it could happen naturally? What if everyone could generate ideas simultaneously and you had dozens of meeting formats to choose from, having a nice variety? And what if the engagement was so big that the only problem to solve in a meeting would be how to break overly intense discussions? No matter what kind of meeting format you choose, it all starts from a good invitation. A good meeting invitation should plant a seed of excitement. It should give purpose to an individual. Why are they attending your meeting? If there is no point for an individual to come, they shouldn't attend a meeting just because it was there scheduled for them. They should understand why they are going to that meeting. When you are sending a meeting invitation, try not to give too much of your opinion in it. Just give a theme. Sometimes I found myself people adding suggestions in a meeting or throughout a meeting, giving their ideas or like shoving them to others without first listening to what others have to say. Try to give good questions in an invitation rather than suggestions. Also, it's nice if you briefly describe the meeting format, where you tell what will happen, how. It's nice if you set expectations or actions that will follow after meeting, conclusion, the good stuff that will come out of it. And it's quite necessary to provide all the related material. For example, if you are doing something new that others aren't familiar with, let them read about it in advance, because it's pretty hard, at least for me, to get into new stuff on the spot. And here is an example of a good meeting invitation. Why is it good? Because it briefly explains why should you care in the purpose section. It briefly describes what to expect in a meeting in the invitation section. It lays down the agenda in the steps section. It has a follow-up section for what's in it for you in debrief. And it has the related information section in the more section that you can see here. One massive anti-pattern that I have noticed in pretty much every single organization I've been working with was reoccurring meetings. Why is it an anti-pattern? It's so easy to have scheduled meetings for Scrum, for example, where at the same time every day you will have a retrospective, at another day you'll have refinement. Don't get me wrong, having a schedule and those meetings at the same time is not a bad thing in itself. What is bad, however, is just relying on the existing meeting invitations and not customizing them for every meeting. For refinement and retrospective, it is especially important. For refinement, it is important to give material to read in advance, because it's always different things we talk about during a refinement. And for a retrospective, well, you should ask people nice questions in advance and not wait for the answers on the spot when it happens. It really helps. So when you want creative meetings, when you want to explore, reveal things, use custom meeting invitations. It helps. Now let's get into liberating structures themselves. What are they? There are 33 liberating structures to choose from. In this picture, if you count, it's 7 by 5, so it's 35 squares. And the first two squares from top left corner represent the principles which liberating structures are based on, the design elements that they include. And it's recommended that if you are starting out, you go at the first top left liberating structure and explore them going from top left to the right, going down and to the right, like this. Why is it important that you follow this route? Because some liberating structures include other liberating structures within them, like they're composable. That's why you might be overwhelmed going for, let's say, the bottom right liberating structure for starters. Though if you are sure that it is a good fit for your problem, go ahead and try it as well. People don't usually know what liberating structures are. It's actually quite a recent thing. It was first used in 2002 in Latin America, and it was created by Keith McCandless and Henry Lipmanovich. And here you can see the picture of the two. But they spread the idea, and now it's getting more and more popular in other continents, in Europe. They have Slack channel and other communities, meetings where they discuss ideas, and new liberating structures are being created up to this day. You can actually visit their website. It's liberatingstructures.com, where you will find all the liberating structures that have been developed and that are currently being developed. And for a beginner, for someone who just heard the word liberating structures, it might be quite intimidating and overwhelming seeing so many meeting formats. How do you even choose one? And a nice way to pick a good meeting format is based on the problem that you have. On the right side, you can see a list of problems that liberating structures try to solve, that that a specific liberating structure is suited for. And on the left side, you see the actual liberating structure that represents the problem. So for example, if you want to rapidly share ideas while making new connections, impromptu networking is the liberating structure fit for you. Another way to start is by using the Liberating Structures app, LISA in short. It's useful because it has tags like reveal, analyze, spread, strategize, plan, and help, which allows you to filter liberating structures based on the intention, the problem that you have, based on those 6 tags. Why are liberating structures working? What makes them special? You know, in conferences like Build Stuff, word microservices is a really common word used in software development. Actually, micro meetings is also a valid word, which is quite common in liberating structures. Just like you can have async code, you can have async meetings as well. What does that mean? It means that sometimes if you want to save time in meetings, you can have multiple discussions happening simultaneously. You don't have to have people talking one by one in some meeting formats. You can basically produce ideas simultaneously. And here's the thing. Usually in a discussion, it takes several minutes to get the idea bubble up out of an intense discussion, and then 1 minute to share it, for example. And here is where async micro meetings come in. Instead of hearing how one idea is being formed at a time, you can let others form their own ideas in small groups while you focus on your own, and then just synchronize at the very end, after let's say 7 minutes of time. You can then synchronize with the rest of the people and here cherry pick basically their key ideas, key points that they have come up with, that they have refined during the time where a sync micro meeting was happening. And the first fundamental liberating structure that I highly recommend for everyone, because it's a generally good format for saving meeting time, and especially it's great for improving engagement, is 1, 2 for all. Here's how it works. You give a question, a topic for a person, for a group of people actually. And then an individual person will think about that for 1 minute. Then you pair that person, or rather let them choose whom they want to approach, whom they get paired with, or you randomize that, and let a pair to discuss the question for 2 minutes more. Then you pair 2 pairs and discuss the question, the topic, for 4 minutes more. And in those 7 minutes, it's usually enough to have an idea formed and refined and presented to others. And after those 7 minutes, you synchronize. You synchronize by having a single person from a group of 4 exchange ideas with the whole group. So for example, if you had 30 people, you would have 6 groups of 5 or similar number. You can have slightly varying number, 4 to 6 people in every group. So roughly to cover and explore idea and involve literally everyone in a group of 30 people and hear everyone's opinion, at least to some point, it would take only 15 minutes for 30 people. 7 minutes for discussing it simultaneously, and then roughly 8 or so minutes, 1 or 2 minutes at a time for every mini group to share their ideas with the rest. So it's really cool. I have applied this both in real life, in a virtual environment as well. If you wonder how does it work in virtual environment, we have breakout rooms where you can randomly split people into groups of 2, 4, and so on. It's configurable. Zoom, Slack, maybe Slack no, but Zoom and Teams definitely have this option. So it's really cool. If you want to read more about it, there is a link as well. But you can find about all liberating structures in the website, or if you just Google it. So 1-2-4-all is really great because it wakes people up and engages everyone simultaneously in a discussion. No more dozing off during a meeting, no more being bored. You're always constantly in a discussion. That's why it's so awesome. Sometimes there are teams and products that are quite successful, and to a point where you wonder whether meeting like a retrospective has a point, because you don't really find yourself making mistakes anymore. You are rocking your deliveries and everything is going generally well. What do you do then? Is there a point for a retrospective? Sometimes you might be looking at things from a bad angle. Sometimes we tunnel vision ourselves at trying to improve things by adding new things. But what if our existing process or teamwork or product has already too many of those things? Sometimes instead of adding, it's worth taking away, and maybe we'll still have as good or if not better product. So TRIZ liberating structure suggests that instead of trying to improve your product, finding ways of making the best out of your teamwork, try to inverse that and think how to completely destroy your product and company and make the worst out of your work. Here's how it works. In the picture on the left, you can see just a small part of this. I was doing this with a team of interns, and they were figuring out what's the worst possible outcome for them, and it was unusable internal website if at the end of internship they created such a website that was unusable. And so first thing that TRIZ does, come up with worst possible outcomes. Then pick one of those worst possible outcomes and figure out how to achieve those possible outcomes. Go crazy. That's why TRIZ is fun. You can go crazy. You can come up with crazy ideas. It's lots of fun. But that's the start. So you come up with a list of destructive actions. Then out of that list of destructive actions, pick a few. Just go through the list of those actions and see if anything that you do right now represents those actions. If anything that you do looks like those destructive habits that you just fantasized out of thin air. And actually, often, if not always, you'll find at least 3 or more. And when you find those actions that are actually counterproductive, look for ways how to stop them, how to prevent those counterproductive actions. So it's like going through hell and then looking for your salvation by finding how to stop those things that lead to your destruction. So it's really cool and fun. Not only does TRIZ work in work environment, it could work in a relationship, for example. You know, when relationship is progressing well, you might start moving forward and think about questions like, should you get married? Should you move in? Should you buy a house together? And me and my girlfriend were having such a question too, whether we should live together. And we identified breakup material. We discussed whether any of that could happen. And then we figured out how to prevent those things that would lead towards that. So now we live successfully together. So mission accomplished. Let's get back to work stuff. Especially in introverted programming, it has a lot of introverted people. And at least in my environment, I found that some people are not so great at verbally expressing what they feel, what they think. And maybe it's not that they cannot express themselves at all. Maybe there is a better way of doing so. So instead of letting people to verbally express themselves, try a different media. For example, drawing. So drawing together asks people to draw how they feel or what they experience throughout, let's say, a sprint. And people draw simultaneously, and then in the end, you play charade, guessing what others drew. It's fun. It doesn't always yield great actions, like it's slightly less productive actions-wise compared to other liberating structures, but it's lots of fun, and it slightly opens people up. It makes them feel more comfortable. And here is the experiments I've done. I did this with 2 teams. In one team, we gave total freedom to people and asked them to draw what they want, however they want. The problem with this approach was that some people were better artists than others, and this created inequality. The whole point of liberating structures is to give equal opportunity for everyone to express themselves. So giving total freedom to draw is not the best approach. And here is how to fix it. Officially, drawing together suggests to use primitive shapes. Everyone can draw a square, a circle, a triangle. And using those primitive shapes, compose something nice, and then play charade. This creates equal environment for everyone, and is good. Another liberating structure is 25-10 crowdsourcing. Sometimes you have large groups of people and you want to facilitate that. You want to get the best ideas from like 100 of people, for example. How do you manage that? So this is the liberating structure meant for that. Why does it work? It basically starts with writing down an idea and holding it in your hand, and then giving that idea to someone else on a sticky note, and that person at the back of the idea will write what they think about it, and will give it to another person, and ideas get swapped and milled throughout the room like this 5 times. And what does 5 times mean? What does the 25-10 mean in this scenario? It's that you vote from 1 to 5, and max points is 25. I actually don't know what 10 means. Maybe someone doesn't vote 1 all the time, so that's what it could mean. Anyways, so you mill ideas around, and then you ask whether people have 25, whether people have 24, and they talk about those best voted ideas first until we run out of time. For me, I applied this in virtual setting. I tried to have a board split into sections so that we could mill ideas around, take them from the center, have 2 sections, one on the left for unvoted ideas, one on the right for voted ideas. And I already got tired explaining this. It didn't work simply because it's complicated and for no good reason. So for virtual setting, it doesn't work because it's not natural. You create fuss for no good reason. It's decent for waking people up to try to initiate some action, but it's not so great for actual productivity. Basically, there are better alternatives for virtual format. So not all liberating structures are great in virtual format. Not everything is about product, especially if we think about agile setting. It says in the manifesto that people should be preferred over processes. And as I mentioned, the experience I found myself in meetings was that often people would speak too much. Meetings would slightly derail. Others would interrupt. And this would cause a feeling of being ignored, and we sometimes forget empathy due to that. So to solve that problem, there is a nice liberating structure called helping heuristics, which goes like this. There are two roles, speaker and coach. Speaker starts talking for 2 minutes. They have only 2 minutes and there is no exceptions allowed. After 2 minutes, a coach will advise to the one who spoke based on what they said for 1 minute. And in the meanwhile, the rest of the people will listen and take notes. And so after those 2 minutes of speaking, 1 minute of advice, there is a few minutes discussion to talk about what happened, to critically evaluate what was spoken, what was advised, and whether anything else could be suggested or some general comments. So in roughly 5 minutes, you get one person talk about their issue and exchange ideas with others. And like this, you rotate with people and go through. In 1 hour, you can easily go through, in actually half an hour, you can easily go through a group of 6 people. So it works, and it teaches people to listen. It teaches people to talk on point. So if you have those issues, helping heuristic might help. Have you ever wondered whether your team members are heard, seen, and respected? It really sucks if they are not like that. It really sucks if people in our teams feel that way, but you cannot, it's hard to approach and ask them these questions. Therefore, there is a liberating structure for that, giving roughly 5 minutes for people to talk about how they feel, or rather, have they ever experienced not being heard, seen, or respected? So this liberating structure is a maintenance check to identify whether people don't feel that well. And for 5 minutes, one person talks, the others listen, then a little discussion happens, and everyone goes and talks in 5 minutes about their experiences. So it's not something that you should be doing often, but as a maintenance check, once in half a year, it's a pretty good thing. So if you apply all the previous liberating structures, you might have optimized your time, and you now know how to generate ideas simultaneously. But this still doesn't mean that out of all those ideas, you will produce actions, things that you can act upon, and things that could create value for you. If you find yourself talking too much and without any important actions, without people owning them, then discovery action dialogue might help you. It teaches how to focus, and it picks one problem out of the given problems. People vote on what's important to them, and then runs it through a series of questions. And here you can see those 7 questions that you ask about a problem. for discovery action dialogue. It basically tries to capture the essence of why do you have the problem and why haven't you solved the problem yet, and what do you need to solve that problem? What's blocking you? So it's really good for chronic problems that have been for a long, long time, or it's good for when you just have a lot of issues and don't know what to decide. Just pick one and run it through those questions, and I can guarantee that you will come up with actions to solve that problem. Software development is full of risks, and some risks are critical, other risks are not so critical. Some things are risky, other things are not so risky. Basically, there is a liberating structure that tries to come up with scenarios based on critical things and risky things. Here is how it goes. Pick one critical thing and pick one uncertain thing, one thing that you're uncertain about. In this example, we had a problem with SQL jobs, sometimes failing in production. And we picked one axis where we put stable SQL jobs and unstable SQL jobs, like the two contrasting things. On another axis, we put lots of data and not enough data, or no data. Basically, the effectiveness of a SQL job depends on data. And what we want to achieve is to have constantly stable jobs so that we can release safely. Based on those axes, we created 4 scenarios. Risky to release, do not release. It's maybe okay to release, but it needs to be measured, and everything is on control, you can release. For every part of a plot, we put actions that cover each scenario. We didn't put any actions in control, or rather you can see on the axis itself there are some actions that covers both parts, but you're free to do how you want. Anyways, this kind of layout of things is good when you want to look at things from the perspective of risks and how you tackle the kinds of risks and what kind of scenarios you can come up. So it's pretty good because it opens up a different perspective and is a convenient way of countering risks. And here I have written articles on each of the liberating structure I talked about, except critical uncertainties and discovery and action dialogue. And to summarize, I would say that in order to have engaging and fun meetings, you should have a strong invitation, one with meaning and purpose for an individual. You should have an environment where people feel equal. You should try and make meetings varying so that there is a perspective, a different perspective opened at different time, every time. Meetings should be informal so that people are free to express however they want. And meetings should be asynchronous so that you save time by focusing on your own idea while allowing others to simultaneously focus on their own ideas and just present the outcome in the end. So apply those 5 principles, and I'm sure that you will create engaging and fun meetings. So thank you, and you can get in touch with me with the following contacts, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yes?
You mentioned that some liberating structures are not suitable for virtual ones.
Yeah.
is there any list of such which is not suitable, so you won't try to use it? And because now most of us working from home, so
Yeah. Out of all liberating structures that are not suitable to do online, I would say there is that crowdsourcing thing, which is for a large group of people. So it's milling ideas, passing them around with sticky notes. That doesn't work online in my eyes. And there's another one called impromptu. Sorry, that's called I forgot the name, but it's basically you act your problem and others observe what happened and take notes. You have like 30 minutes to talk about, to enact a problem that happened throughout the sprint. So that doesn't work in online setting because, I mean, body language plays a huge part in it and you miss that online. So they're just like two, I would say, liberating structures that don't work online. Others are doable for sure.
Thanks. I was really excited to see that there's liberating structures going to be presented today because I've been working with liberating structures for quite a while, but never have been working in the tech field. So it's super awesome. And I want to ask, do you have practice circles in Lithuania for this? Like, do you have like groups of people like meeting up and talking about this? Because it's great to hear, but it's easy to try. It's super awesome as well. So I'm just curious to join if there's any.
I don't know if there's anything in Lithuania. I myself have been a part of a Slack group, but it's international. And I think, again, it originates more in other countries, mostly in USA, South America, probably, as mentioned in the origin slide. So I think if you want to have a community for liberating structures, it's good to look for Liberating Structures Slack, and you can, again, find it in their website. They are quite active. I think roughly once a week they have some meetings, some gathering online or in person, but in other countries, if in person. And they do practice them. And they're quite active. If you have questions, you can ask and they will answer.
I saw a lot of the liberating structures being around timings, like the 1 to 4 all.
Yeah.
How do you enforce that the timings are respected?
It takes a lot of discipline, actually, but you must be strict. That's the key rule. If people, basically, you should say in advance that you have this much time and there are no exceptions. If you overstepped your time, you should be stopped and you should say in advance that that's okay. That's not rude. That's just how it works. So have a timer. There are tons of online timers. When I was facilitating 1 to 4 all for Women Go Tech group, we had prepared, I think, 4 timers, 1-minute timer, 2-minute timer, 4-minute timer, and 1 more timer to sync ideas. So we would have those timers at the ready and just press a different button at a different round. And then after a round, reset the timers. That's how we did. So have multiple timers prepared and run them in order. And actually, the funny thing is, for the first round in 1 to 4 all, people might be a little bit confused, but on second, third, and fourth try, they are like kind of robots and automatically just switch to the other mode, to the other gear when the timer ends. So it's important to have a sound at the end of a timer, non-annoying sound, like a bell is a decent sound. And another thing about 1 to 4 all, it's better if in different rounds you sync with you group with different people, not the same people. It's more fun that way because people get too used to too much in their comfort zone. So it works better that way. But yeah, use timers. There are tons of online timers, and have them pre-made. Hope that answers the question.
So I would like to say really thank you to Almantas, and would like to conclude your session with Algirdas Milašius, who wrote awesome speak, Almantai. Best regards from everyone in the office.
Thank you.